All right. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today for a public forum, Work-Life Health Balance Through Menopause, a water cooler conversation. I am Dr. Irina Ninye, Chief Science Officer for the Society for Women's Health Research. SWHR is a national nonprofit dedicated to advancing women's health through science, policy, and education while promoting research on sex differences to optimize women's health. Menopause is a universal life stage for women that impacts their personal and professional lives and has far-reaching economic, social, and healthcare implications for society. Menopause symptoms range from hot flashes and vaginal dryness to sleep disturbances and brain fog. On any given day, millions of women are undergoing or have completed the menopause transition, and many experience life disruptions with limited knowledge and/or access to the treatment options and support they would like to navigate their health journey. Managing menopause while at work is often a key part of this journey. Women are integral in today's workforce, and the civilian labor force comprises 74.6 million women. And women own almost 10 million businesses. We also know that the intersectional identities of an individual affect their health and well-being. Thus, age, race, ethnicity, culture, gender, health and disability, caregiving roles, religion, and other factors all influence how a woman shows up and is perceived in the workplace, especially during this transformative time in her life. The cost of lost productivity associated with menopause symptoms amounts to around $1.8 billion annually. On the other hand, women have also described their menopause experience as a time for reinvention and personal growth, ushering them into an era of reflection and life satisfaction. It's Women's History Month, and we are going on a journey a few steps back in time when people gathered at a water cooler for informal chats that turned into crucial workplace exchanges. So today, SWHR is hosting a virtual water cooler conversation to discuss the impact of menopause on women's health, strategies for navigating care for their symptoms, and insight to address potential workplace challenges that women experience during menopause. We are pleased to have three amazing panelists joining us today. Kavita Joshi, menopause advocate, Dr. Sharon Seibel, associate editor of the Hot Years magazine, and Carlika Basnight Menendez, founder of INSO Inc. I would also like to thank the sponsors of today's event, Astellas Pharma, Bayer, and Pfizer. SWHR maintains independence and editorial control over our program development, content, and work products. As always, we will be live tweeting during this event and invite you to use the hashtag SWHR Talks Menopause on all social media. Our panelists today will share their personal journeys with menopause, each unique, but hopefully providing insight for those of you watching as to how you might navigate your own health journey or support other women during theirs. Allow me to further introduce our panel of menopause experts. Kavita Joshi is an experienced program manager for training and technology in the Customer Solutions Group at AARP Services, Inc. Passionate about women's health, particularly menopause awareness, Kavita actively supports education and collaboration around this pivotal life stage. She's committed to raising awareness and providing resources that empower women to navigate menopause with confidence, focusing on creating supportive environments where women can learn, share, and thrive. Having completed perimenopause, Kavita shares her enthusiasm for workplace wellness as the co-chair of the menopause subcommittee within the Women's Employee Resource Group at AARP. Dr. Sharon Seibel is an educator, speaker, and health and wellness advocate for midlife women. A Harvard-trained psychiatrist, her menopause experience and health journey prompted career and life changes that eventually landed her as the associate editor of the Hot Years magazine and co-author of the book Working Through Menopause: The Impact on Women, Businesses, and the Bottom Line. Her latest book, Beating the Odds: Lessons Learned from Pancreatic Cancer, is due out later this year. Carlika Basnight Menendez is a passionate community and women's wellness advocate, life coach, and accomplished author. She is the founder of INSO Inc., a nonprofit organization with the mission to educate, empower, engage, and encourage women as they navigate menopause. At the unexpected age of 30, a total hysterectomy, thrust her into early menopause in a journey that evolved into a comprehensive approach to supporting women in professional environments. Carlika now helps organizations create inclusive, supportive cultures that recognize and address the unique challenges women face during menopause. I will now invite this amazing panel to turn on their cameras. Welcome, ladies. As you can see, to those that are out there, we are set up to have a very engaging conversation. And while we have prepared certain topics to cover, those of you who are tuned in live are invited to submit questions via the app throughout the event. We will try to address as many questions as we can during this program, particularly submissions that cover recurring themes or questions with broader applicability to our audience. Please note that our conversation today is intended for educational purposes and not intended or implied to serve as a substitute for medical, professional, or legal advice. SWHR encourages all patients and consumers to consult a healthcare professional provider to determine their individual needs. And so with that, let's chat. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our panelists.
Thank you for having us.
Great. You know, there are so many ways to enter menopause. Most women will experience this natural decline in their body's production of estrogen in their 40s and 50s, although this can happen early for some women and can take years to complete this transition. Women also experience a more immediate shift into menopause due to damage or removal of their ovaries that produce this estrogen hormone. This could be from hysterectomy, as we mentioned earlier, a chemotherapy, or some other medical procedure. So maybe Carlika, can you start off? You were just 30 years old when you experienced menopause. What was that like in experiencing something that's typically associated with women much older than you?
So, first of all, thank you for having me. But at 30 years old, the thoughts of, if we back up a little bit, it was due to undiagnosed endometriosis, which I was in pain for years. Tried birth control, pills, different things, and nothing worked. Unfortunately, even going back and forth to the doctors for a while, right? They said it was all in my head. So the pain, crawling in the floor, heavy bleeding, the menstrual cycle, literally for 2 days. Those first 2 days, really being sick and very debilitating in the workplace. I had to call out, or if I was forced to show up because of attendance. In the employee handbook and different things, so I wasn't going to get in trouble, it was still very debilitating, especially in the medical field or in the educational sector. And so it changed my life forever. I do not regret it, but the surgery did almost take my life. So I did fight for my life after having the surgery. And it's a journey. I left with two pamphlets and an opportunity to try to figure this out on my own, because at 30 and back then, I could not find forums like this or support groups, and I felt like it was a secret society. And I definitely felt alone in that journey, having that first hot flash, or just when things started changing and happening, who could I talk to? Who could I go to? So it's definitely a blessing to see more movement in the menopausal women's health world, and we're making progress, but there's still so much to be done as well. So for me, it was a journey. It has not, or was not, easy, but it has been empowering as well.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Kavita, you had the natural decline in estrogen, so you actually underwent a perimenopause or menopause transition over some time, over a number of years. What symptoms did you experience, and how would you say you managed them?
First of all, thank you for having me as a panelist and sharing my story. I think this is incredible that a group of us have come together to share, our personal journeys and hopefully empower other listeners of both genders to take notice of menopause and its mental and physical symptoms and how it may impact your daily life. As a woman, 52-year-old now, in my professional life, I have been managing learning and development training for over 22 years. I have caregiving responsibilities at home for my mother. I'm a mother of two young boys. And so going through the perimenopause and menopause journey, I faced a range of symptoms that included, along with my hypothyroid, was a little bit difficult with like basically an irritated gut, dermatitis, and emotional and physical challenges, that come with things like brain fog and sleeplessness and some level of anxiety and tiredness and pain in my joints. Those were the things that really kept me down most nights and most days. Managing all of these while working through life, home, and career has taught me the importance of prioritizing self care and advocating for my own health. So managing menopause at work has its own challenges, so sometimes when I'm working, I have all of these hats that I'm juggling as a mother, as a caregiver, as a professional. Also, I'm a part of a lot of different ERGs at my work. I don't have time to sometimes, fall back sick and take some time for myself, but actually it's a learning curve. So going through the perimenopause journey made me stop and take notice of how I'm feeling and to advocate for myself by setting up, first of all, boundaries, especially with my teammates and my leadership, to let them know how I'm feeling.
Oh, that's good. We're actually going to get into the workplace
Okay.
stuff in a bit. So I want to
Okay.
I want to get into
Okay.
that piece a little bit later.
No worries, no worries.
Definitely
Yeah,
dive
but
in
but
there.
it's all I'm saying is it's this is what I've been experiencing, and we can get to that later on as whenever you cue me that for that. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. And Sharon, I know we've talked before about how you experience menopause kind of twice in a
That's
way, you
right.
know. Can you explain like what we mean by that? How did you have a double menopause?
Double menopause. I did not have a typical menopause experience, that's for sure. Well, the first time happened when I was in my 40s, and it came about because I was very concerned that so many women in my family were dying or had died of what we presume to be ovarian cancer in their 40s and 50s. So when I was in my 40s, I said, oh no, my next in line. And I didn't know what to do about it until I read the first prospective study that said that if women with the BRCA gene mutation have their tubes and ovaries out, they can drastically reduce their chance of ovarian and breast cancer. So I immediately went and got tested, found out I do have the BRCA2 gene mutation, and I had my ovaries and tubes out. I had finished my family, so it was a perfect time to do that. And the important thing, it was an in and out procedure. I went in, my tubes and ovaries came out, I went home the same day. But the important thing in terms of menopause is I went home with the prescription for estrogen and progesterone. And it was the appropriate level of estrogen because women who are younger need a higher dose than later on. So I really had really no problems. I was put on the medication and I just went about my business. I didn't experience the typical symptoms that many women have. And this went on, and I was able to function at work. I could do anything, whatever I needed to do. So if I want to fast forward now 20 years, because you said I went through it twice, I was diagnosed with a very early breast cancer 2.5 years ago. And they found it because having the gene mutation, I have to have a mammogram followed by an MRI every 6 months. And I've been doing this for years. So they found a very early cancer that they were able to treat. And the reason I'm talking about it now is because they asked me to come off of estrogen at the beginning of all of this. And I had 2 weeks to wean off of it. And that's when I understood that menopause should not be called menopause, it should be called dreadopause, because I was experiencing the majority of symptoms that are typical for women to experience. And it was really challenging. I was having trouble doing my work. How could I edit and write if I couldn't even think? If I was falling asleep, I was tired. I had a lot of symptoms. So I tried many non-hormonal remedies as well as different lifestyle things. And I got a little bit of relief, but not enough to be able to function well. Finally, I was put on a different medication that really took care of things. And within a few weeks, I was back. So I think the take-home message is that people really need to work with their healthcare providers. It may take a while to figure it out, but it is possible to figure it out so that we don't have to tough it out.
And actually to that, Kavita Karlika as well, to add to that, there's a lot of changes that go on during midlife. And so whether it's a natural menopause transition or it's a medical menopause transition, um, you might have to see a lot of doctors because, like you mentioned, there's the brain fog and the hot flashes. There might be some challenges with mood and mental health. So depression, anxiety can increase um, due to menopause, changes that happen during menopause. And so what recommendations do you have for women to coordinate and like manage seeing these different providers and getting the care to seek out whether or not the symptoms or their challenges will pass or whether or not they're, indication for something more serious or long term?
Well, I would definitely say one, knowing your body as well and paying attention, tracking and trending for yourself, and having some insight into your family medical history as well. I love what Dr. Sharon said earlier, right? Just knowing that her family history stated this, let me be proactive. So I think one, if we start paying attention to our bodies, asking questions within our families, to have these conversations that typically start right at the kitchen table to figure out what is the likelihood, what is the possibility, so that we can have a heads up per se on it, just being proactive. But as far as myself, like I said, I left with two pamphlets. The only time that I went back was when I got discharged less than 24 hours and being rushed to the emergency room. After that,
Mm.
I had no other conversations with any other doctors at 30 years old. So, yes, the pamphlet of HRT, hormone replacement therapy, was given to me, but all the doctor kept saying is this is going to put you in menopause and you're going to gain weight, you're going to gain weight, you're going to gain weight. So that was like a broken record to me. And that was for someone who was overcoming, right? At the height of overcoming an eating disorder. So who I wasn't in the mind frame to want to gain weight, but I did not have an opportunity to make an informed decision. So making sure that you're able to have an informed conversation so that you can make a decision on what's going to be the best treatment option for you. Because one, everyone's not a candidate for hormone replacement therapy or menopause hormone therapy. Um, Everyone's not a candidate based on family history. It's not always readily affordable for people as well when we think of insurance. At that time, the doctor was telling me it was going to be $600 every 3 weeks for an injection. I was like, oh, okay, but that's all. So once again, for me, I've never been on anything. I'm definitely sure I should have at some point in time, soon right after that. But nevertheless, lifestyle changes and just being proactive. So lifestyle changes have definitely been a huge game changer for me.
I think it's important to be able to identify a menopause practitioner who is trained and certified, if it's possible, so that you can get the whole range of options.
And
And I'm sorry, it was very difficult what you went through.
Yes, it is.
so Sharon, I know because you were on the menopause, I'm sorry, on like hormone therapy off, and this tends to be a controversial piece. If you can just give us some insight into what what factors did you consider when you were weighing your various treatment options or not?
Are you
So it's
talking?
not so much you need to
Uh-huh.
do this or you don't, but like what was going through your mind? What laid heavier in your decision that you might be able to just share with those that are listening?
Are you talking about when I first had my ovaries out?
Or yes, that and when you were looking at different treatment options, because you said you tried a couple different things when you now came off the hormone therapy and to be able to get to where you found some symptom management. And so
Mhm.
like what were those things that you thought about that, you know, they maybe can shed some light and support to other women in how when they're determining which options to weigh?
Well, I think that for young women who have their ovaries out, it's not too controversial in terms of the medical community that unless there's a real compelling reason for them not to be on hormone therapy, that they should be put on it because it will help prevent a lot of um, medical issues. in terms of it'll help protect from cardiovascular disease. It helps with diabetes. It's just a whole host of things. It's very protective. So most providers would, I think, agree with that. People have different opinions as women get older, whether they want to be on it or not. And they have to decide for themselves, knowing their medical background. For me, I think that it's been very important because I have a lot of different issues, and it's been able to address all those issues for me in terms of my bone health, my cholesterol, and my hemoglobin A1C. So the estrogen, and also, well, there's just a number of things that it's been helpful for. The medication that I'm on now is protective of my breasts and my uterus, but it's also allowing me to get the symptomatic relief and treatment or help support for the other issues that I have. I don't know if I answered that or if you have other
No,
issues.
I think that's important because I always say that one person's story is individual, but there's so much to glean in hearing someone's story that resonates with our different people that are tuning in. And so I think it is good that you have a very unique story in that you you had an option to do it and you had an option and then you had a time where you didn't have the option to be on it. So you
Right.
actually had to, you had to address it in both ways. And so while you saw that there were benefits, you also saw where there was going to be risk and you had to make a new decision. And even to the extent of saying that just because you're on a treatment at some point doesn't mean you can't change. And I think that's also another message that's worth noting that things change, life circumstances, health circumstances, and personal preferences. Because Carlika, you mentioned you were not, you wouldn't have been on it, but you wish you were more informed and you might have made different decisions had you had gotten different information. Um, Kavita, I did want to kind of pivot to you as well. I mean, we can't have a water cooler conversation, right, without addressing how menopause impacts work life. And so the Impact Menopause Study, Impact EMPACT Menopause Study, reported that 2 out of 5 women considered finding a new job or found a new job due to their menopause symptoms and challenges at work. And so, Kavita, um, you're still employed, right? And you were mentioning earlier how you started, really making some changes at work. And so you also, the work that you do, because you do training in that type of work is social and very cognitive. Can you talk about how you manage your symptoms, and how it
Sure.
might have impacted your job function?
Sure. So I think the to answer your question, I think one of the things that I'm going to lean towards is like how I actually did a very informed meeting with my doctor. Instead of going to the regular checkups, I went in one day for a menopause checkup, and only sat at the table and talked to him about, my symptoms and what we can do to tackle it. And that was very important because the amount of tiredness and fatigue and sleeplessness and anxiety and pain I was feeling was really, really impacting me to be functional, to be able to give it all happily at home instead of being grumpy. And that happens. I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day, going through this transition and at work. And I love my job. I have been where I am in this industry for 22 years. I've been in this current position for 12 years and plus. And I truly, truly enjoy identifying what it can be in the curricula or catalog and course developments that can really help the audience, understand things better. So I really wanted my brain to be working and get rid of the brain fog, etc. So in order to do that, I had a detailed discussion with him. He did offer me the HRT solution route, and he also discussed with me the OTC route to kind of handle things symptomatically. And I took the decision personally to go to the OTC route and handle my symptoms through medication over the counter. And I wanted to personally give it a month of 6 months, a time period of 6 months to see how I'm feeling. If it would have failed, I probably would have gone back and said, hey, I've given up on this. let's do HRT, right? But it worked for me. I did manage my diet, exercising with weights, cardio, and trying to sleep on time in the night, and making sure that you give your sleep time a lot of weight, because we sometimes tend to not do that. And that rest in the night is very, very important to wake up in the morning and be clocked back in into functioning properly. So that was very important. To do that, I have to communicate with my family that there's only so much mom can do, or wife can do in the day, or in the evening for hours, and I had a threshold of cutoff. It's important to communicate these things, because and it's almost like, how they say it takes a village to raise a child. It's the same way around for women going through this transition. It does take a village. And so the same thing happened at my work. I discussed this with my managers, and they fortunately understood my dilemma and were very flexible in helping me understand that I'm most productive in the daytime, in the mornings. When I come in, I have all the energy, and then towards the afternoon, for example, I do more collaborative sessions and more things that I can put off or decide my day for the next day. And those things were helpful for me. In fact, by doing these things, it just suddenly occurred to me, Irene, that between last year and now, I've actually taken up even more responsibilities, and jumped into ERGs and have handled events, and done like a lot of public speaking forums. And I think it's happened because of all this backing and support that I've received with my doctors, with my own self, advocating for my own self, and also with the support of my family.
And so that's really great that you were able to make those, even just the adjustment of what type of work you did in the morning versus the afternoon, once you were able to learn where your strengths and your challenges were. I know, Carlika, you currently work a job that requires a lot of standing and being on your feet, right? And
Look, yeah.
and, and so I can imagine you experience some physical challenges, going through, your menopause transition. I don't know if this was a job you had when you first entered menopause, but if maybe you can talk about how did you manage that even now?
So initially, I was in education.
Mhm.
So we're talking education, teaching. So you're in your classroom. I had my children all day long, besides that little window of a lunch break. And so even if a hot flash came, I couldn't just run out the classroom and say, "Hey, hold on, I'll be back." Right. And so now in the medical field, and I've been in the medical field for years now, from hospitals to private labs and different things, you have all the PPE, your lab coats, goggles, the strain on looking in a microscope for hours at a time, and then up and you're walking around and you're running here. And so absolutely. Now thankfully, in a lot of laboratories, those who really push it and implement ergonomics, that is definitely a plus, in which we can implement that at home or wherever you are as well. And so the nice cushioned mats and different things, that definitely helps, is a little softer on the joints. But literally just being sometimes in spaces where there's not enough ventilation, right? Or if you're running a particular test, special stains or anything like that, you sometimes are confined to that area. And so a lot of times people would see me lab coat on, lab coat off. I always had water on the outside, just trying to figure out ways that I can help me. And unfortunately, with the lack of awareness in so many workplaces, which we're moving the needle to have more menopause friendly workplaces, the lack of awareness and the lack of education sometimes results in, well, most times results in the lack of empathy, right? Having someone ask you, do you want to stick your head in a freezer? That's not really a joke or funny or things that you should say, especially depending, how are you doing today, right? That could be a remedy. But on the other end, I've had employees who are like, oh my God, my mom's going through this. They bought me fans, they bought all kind of cooling apparatuses just to try to help out. And so sometimes just that awareness piece, that it can affect performance, it can affect productivity and different things. And when you're expected to keep performing at a high rate in different things, whether that may be sleep disturbances. So for me, it's just making those small changes, making sure I'm hydrated, um, having open communication with my managers and different ones. And I know everyone is not at that place where they feel as free to do that, but I do think the more we rebuild and build trust in the workplace and have the awareness where people feel comfortable to say, hey, look, if I step out for a couple of minutes, I'm not just trying to take an extra break on purpose, but I think you'll rather me take those 2 minutes than me not show up at all, right?
That is really, it's unfortunate that some of the insensitivity that is experienced around menopause and aging. And like you said, some days you can laugh it off, and some days it really strikes harder. And but we shouldn't have to pick which day we're on. Um, Sharon, can you work for yourself now? So can you and there's so many women out there who are entrepreneurs. So while they might not have the structure, um, or I don't want to say bounds, but the structure of, having a bunch of bosses, you're your own boss. And so you also have your own responsibilities that things land on you a bit differently. Can you speak to how menopause affected your entrepreneurial work life and what that looks like for you?
Well, right now it's fine because I'm not having any problems. But when I was, it was very, very challenging because if I was supposed to write something or edit something and I couldn't concentrate, I had to break it up and do it just small bits at a time. I had to take naps. I just didn't have the energy.
Right.
And so it was very difficult, but at least I was fortunate enough that I could, as long as I got the task done, I could do it however I needed to throughout the day or the week. So that was helpful. And it's just very hard for if you have to have be regimented. I think that I was just fortunate to be able to kind of be on my own schedule.
Did you feel any pressure as far as kind of if you don't do it, it's not getting like there's no one to do it for you. So or maybe there were times where, if you're able to speak to, like, how did you get through times where it was a long stretch where you just weren't feeling like you had the energy? What did you do, or how did you manage that?
I just kind of plowed through it. And even if it took, like, it would take me longer to do things, and I'd have to check myself a lot, like to keep going over it and make sure I didn't make mistakes.
Mm.
So it was difficult, but I was able to do it. It was just not pleasant. And it took a lot of willpower to just keep going.
I can imagine for all of you guys having to push through in various regards. You probably tapped into an inner strength that you didn't even realize you had. How's that? How is that? Now, looking back at what you went through, how you managed it, how does it, like, what are your thoughts now as you reflect back when you think about it?
I'm glad it's behind me, but um, but I am kind of proud of myself of the things that I've been able to tackle, and I think it does give you an inner strength to know that you can deal with things that are seemingly very difficult or seemingly impossible, but they're not impossible. You can do it. But I think the
Absolutely.
bottom line is it's important to try to get help, and it may take time to figure things out, but that you will be able to figure things out, whatever that means for you.
Absolutely. I agree, Dr. Sharon, that when you look back on it, where a surgery that helped me but almost killed me at the same time, right? The leaps and bounds just to see what we're able to do in this space now compared to when I first had a hysterectomy. And it was
Mhm.
just like, who do I talk to? No one wants to talk to this. No one wants to be relatable. Like, is this a secret society or something? So to see now so many conversations and so much more in media and different things, for me, it makes my heart glad because I don't want to see another woman suffer in silence or not knowing that they're a solution for every single problem or for generations to come that are like, I'm not menopausal yet, but you will get there, being proactive to have the information, the education, the awareness to know that you're not alone and that, hey, it's help out here. And for whatever your problem may be, you can make an informed decision to move forward in that. So for me, it's like a new birthing. It's empowering at the same time. So we don't take away from anyone's symptoms, whether that's depression, anxiety, or whatever, because it's not a one size fits all. But I can definitely say if you learn how to embrace it, and one that's just embracing aging, but taking that aging piece out, that menopause is not always correlated to aging. I was only 30 and I've met women younger than me. So when we take out that mindset shift of menopause is only related to older women, that's not true, right? Breaking the stigma. And that's why these conversations are important.
Right. And I agree with you. I'm sorry, in terms of the information, because right now there's a lot of information in organizations that you can go to if you have a hereditary cancer or you think you might have it. Whereas back in the day when I was dealing with it, there wasn't that much around. So it's a lot easier now to get the support.
Absolutely.
And Kavita,
If,
did you want to add
if
something?
yeah, I just wanted to add something to kind of combine both the thoughts together. I think what menopause does to you, the journey, it makes you a boss lady. Because if you don't delegate, if you don't advocate for yourself and you don't time manage yourself, then things could fall apart and it would be more severe for you. So delegate, and as in like ask for support. Time management is like knowing what is your good days and what are your bad days, what tasks you have to do, whether as a homemaker and or at your work. And for me, I discussed my work earlier, but as a homemaker, coming off as an Indian native, Hindu religion, and again, religion plays a very important role because your dietary changes are different. And I'm a vegetarian, and I have now gotten gluten free as well. So I know my good days are on the weekends. So to cook ahead, all of that food that can sustain and help you provide the nourishment and freeze it. I am a very big believer of that, to pack, freeze, portion food. That is a big one. And I just do it not for myself, but for my family as well. So those are the little things I think I would just add on here in this conversation, is to know what is your yin yang, to kind of keep you balanced.
There was something I wanted to circle back around to because I guess we've kind of touched on this a bit. So Sharon, because you said back when it happened, so and there was like a 20-year gap in between your two menopause
Right.
experiences. Carlika, you mentioned yours is about 10 years ago or so, and then Kavita, you're more recently having completed the menopause transition. But there was a couple questions that came in related to how long did symptoms last? And so since you guys have all actually been at different stages post-menopause, how long did your symptoms last? Um, and how are you managing them now if you're still experiencing symptoms?
So I think I'm still going through it, but the severity has lessened because of the over-the-counters I'm taking, for the lifestyle changes that I have made, especially with my nutrition and my exercising. I'm really a big believer of exercising routinely and including weights. I mean, since the day I've heard about like my genetics, my mother has a history of osteoporosis and arthritis in the family. So I'm very, very focused on taking my calcium on time, multivitamins, and exercising with weights. So I think those have helped me. I'm still not out of the woods yet, but I'm able to manage it pretty well.
Carlika, what about you? How are your symptoms?
So for me, they're great. The road ahead, and once again, not ever having any hormonal treatments or anything. Even with being diagnosed a couple of years ago with rheumatoid arthritis and different things, um, I feel amazing. Like I really feel great. My labs look amazing. Everything looks really good. But like Kavita said, I agree with lifestyle changes because this is a transition, right? And every day we're in transition, whether that's, hey, our commute today was a transition.
Mhm.
Technology is a transition every day. So at some point for me, the symptoms have lessened. If I have a hot flash here and there, they're so far and few in between. I remember just only a few years ago, I would seem like they were like back to back, back to back. But then I started writing and really paying attention. What's triggering them? Because I know I shouldn't be having them like contractions back to back, right? And so just started paying attention to my mental health and well-being. I started paying attention, and that's at home, that's at work, my atmosphere, the things I'm eating, what am I doing, and different things. And so for me, I feel amazing, and that would be like the only here and there, but it's so far and few between.
Okay. And Sharon, did you have anything to add to that or?
Just that I agree. I
Okay.
think lifestyle is just so important. Diet, exercise, resistance training, meditation. I do a lot of meditation. It's just all important. My husband has a saying, you have to take care of the sum of you, not just some of you. And I think that's important.
And so to that, there was some notes. I just wanted to make a quick comment. So the menopause transition, if you go through natural perimenopause, the fluctuation in your ovarian hormones of estrogen, progesterone during that time frame can last on average 4 to 8 years. It can be longer for some women. And so menopause is noted as a year, 12 consecutive months of not having a menses or your period. And so that's when the perimenopause, if you're having the menopause transition, would be considered over, and you've now, we'll say a year ago was the date I entered menopause, officially completed menopause. So, and then you're postmenopausal at that point. And symptoms can continue or symptoms can fade. And so, as you kind of heard across our panel, um, that some symptoms are fine and managed. Carlika, for example, her hot flash is very few and far between now, but for a couple years she was having them regularly. I like what you said about journaling and noting. I think that that can really help because in between medical appointments, to have a clearer, more concrete description of what you've been experiencing and how bad it's been, that is also very helpful to share with your provider. And so to that extent, it's always great when you're able to get to a place of managing your symptoms. And so it doesn't mean the symptoms aren't there, but you've gotten to a place where, you know, you can be able to move forward and they're not as bothersome and you feel like you're back to yourself again or your new self. It might not be your old self, it might be your new self. As we've all kind of touched on a bit earlier about how, menopause is a time to reflect and become a boss lady, as as Kavita mentioned. And so I know we're coming up towards the end of our time. And before we wrap up, I have one last question. We get women and general audiences, researchers, healthcare providers, industry, and policymakers, the whole spectrum that tune into our events. And so if you could pick one of these audiences or all of them together abroad, what is one key takeaway that you would offer to help them better support women in the workplace during menopause? And so we'll start with you, Kavita, then Sharon, and then Karlika.
Okay, so thank you for coming to an end with this beautiful, beautiful seminar. We covered so many different things, but I think one message that I want to pass on to the women, and for if there are any men on this webinar listening for their women, is to be compassionate with yourself. Balancing work, life, and health is a continuous process, and giving yourself grace along the way is very, very vital. That's all I want to say. Like, I think I'm done. It sounded like,
Yes.
no, but I'm done. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Then Sharon?
Well, I just want to reinforce that menopause is a transition and it's not about age. It can happen to women when they're very young. And I think that it's important to know that there may be women who are experiencing perimenopause or menopause at a young age that need support in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
So I would definitely say because work life, I don't think we ever really find a true balance of it, but it goes hand in hand, right? We figure out our flow for our work life, our home life, because whatever's taking place at home is potentially affecting me when I leave the house. I didn't leave it at home, I took it with me to work. And we don't really believe in the policy of what you're going through, leave it on the outside. Menopause is not something that we get to leave on the outside or drop off and say, hey, I'll pick you up later, but it's really finding what's going to work for you and your your transition in life. And so with that too, whether that's healthcare providers, educators, anyone in the workplace, have empathy, have awareness, and not just awareness in October during Menopause Awareness Month, but menopause is happening 365. So having that education, having those employee resource groups of women and supporters, right? Can know that, hey, we support you, we're here. Let the open door policy really be an open door policy with trust and confidentiality to say, hey, I'm going through this transition, and this is what I may be needing at this time and season and place in my life. So empathy goes a long way. Advocate for yourself, and then appreciate. If you want to retain your employers and team members, appreciate them, have the conversation so they're willing to come to you to ask for what they may need.
Thank you so much to our panelists, you guys. I really appreciate the time, the insight, your transparency with sharing your experiences, and we hope that it was beneficial and that those that tuned in were able, I'm sure that those that tuned in were able to glean very strong nuggets to help them in their menopause journey. And if they're not undergoing menopause, to support those that are. We'd also like to thank Astellas Pharma, Bayer, and Pfizer for their support of this event and SWHR's menopause program. We will send out an email with the recording of today's water cooler conversation to all registrants, as well as post the recording on the event webpage for future viewing. So please be on the lookout for that and feel free to share with others. To help women navigate their menopause care, SWHR has developed a menopause preparedness toolkit that includes content about recognizing and treating menopause symptoms, preventive care for health conditions associated with menopause and midlife, and talking points for your doctor's appointments, as well as a personal menopause care journal. We're dropping that in the chat, links to those that document, as well as we have two menopause workplace resource guides, one for women that has tips for working while living through your menopause transition and examples of menopause-friendly accommodations at work, and another that is for managers, employers, and human resource professionals to help them better understand the menopause transition and foster menopause-friendly workplaces for all their employees. I know there were a lot of questions that we weren't able to get to, some about autoimmune conditions and menopause, some about work life, additional ones about work life and challenges with diet and metabolism. And I encourage you to look at the Menopause Preparedness Toolkit, where there is some more additional information that you can find on some of those topics. And so understanding women's individual experiences and health journeys really help us inform providers and policy decision makers on critical gaps in women's health. And SWHR invites you to share your story about menopause, maternal health, heart health, and other women's health topics by visiting swhr.org/share your story. You can help to submit nuggets about your story, and we often will be able to post them or share them or glean from your stories from those of you out there. And so, as always, we invite you to connect with us on social media as we continue this very important conversation with hashtag SWHR Talks Menopause. And for more information about menopause and other women's health topics, resources, and events, or even to sign up for our newsletter, visit our website at www.swhr.org. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.